campaign. Now, let's look at this data that is coming from some NDC people who are insisting that President Mahama ought not be the candidate. So this is the case. Let me first make the case for, prepare me President Mahama's photograph and I'll make the case for him. But this is the case that they are building against President Mahama. Just get President Mahama's photograph ready and I'll put it down and make the case for him. This is the case that they are making against President Mahama. They're not just making it for Dr. Dufo. They think it's against President Mahama. It's data that they are throwing up anyway. So let's have a look at it. Northern region is the focus for this page. So in 2012, the National Democratic Congress won 58.6% of the total presidential votes in the Northern region, constituting 345,806 votes is what was won in the Northern region in 2012. And the MPP won 239,000, and that represented 38 votes, so 38.8% of the vote. So NDC won 58%, as you can see on your screen at the top, and then MPP won 38%. MPP had a gain of 1.9%, and NDC had a loss of 0.9%. Let's follow up on the same page, 2016. You will find it over there, the middle one, 2016. NDC gains 389,000. They dropped from 58 to 56% in the Northern Region presidential vote, occasioning a loss of 2.4% of the NDC. And then in 2016, the same 2016 MPP, where they won a significant presidential victory, they get 41% of the North and representing a gain of 2.5%. Proceed to 2020, you'll see that the NDC's presidential candidate is progressively losing election ground in Northern Region from 58% in 2012 ending on 52% in 2020. Given that it is the same candidate for 2012, 2016, and 2020, we can make a reasonable and a mathematically backed assessment that the NDC presidential candidate has been losing ground in the Northern region, his home region, from 2012, 2016 and 2020, and this is what the Do4 people are using to campaign, hoping that with this kind of information they will get more than the 0.0% people are saying they will get. Okay, now if you look at the analysis in the last page, you can read it with me. It says, considering that we have experienced a loss of over 8.4% of our vote to the MPP since 2012, it's crucial to evaluate how we can compete in 2024. Continue with the same candidate from the North who hasn't been able to secure additional votes will lead to a further decline in our standing. That's the assessment that this is making. Well, as we are saying, this is a case being built up against President Mahama. It's a case of mathematical information. It's a case of mathematical data. The NDC votes garnered in 2012, 2016, 2020 shows a steady decline from 58% to 56% to 52%. It still gives the NDC a commanding lead in the Northern region, no doubt about that. It gives the NDC a significant commanding lead. If you can command a region more than 50%, yes, you do have it. But if you can see that your ground is chipping away a little bit, not significantly chipping away anyway, chipping away by 2 percentage points, 5 percentage points, something like that. Altogether, 8 percentage points in 3 election cycles. Perhaps you can call it your stronghold, but you also have to recognize that it's chipping away. What they are saying here is that the NDC must find out from itself why it's chipping away. I don't know. They have to make that determination. Now, because these people who put this document together are campaigning against President Mahama, they are alleging that using President Mahama in 2012, 16, and 20 is the reason why you're having the decline. Let's see what's next on the agenda. Still in the Northern region, they talk about the specific constituency of Damongo, which we know President Mahama's home region, that has always been won by NDC. For the first time in 2020, Samuel Abu-Jinapor, the Minister for Lands, took it out from the NDC and the MPP gained it. So here again, you have in Damongo specific constituency, 2012, John Mahama gets 63%, 63.2%, and then MPP gets 35%. You can see it on your screen, viewers. 2012, 2016, NDC gets 61.5%, and MPP gets 37%. In 2020, NDC still wins the presidential, this time not with 63, but with 55%. The MPP clawing from 35, 37, and now 43%. And it is looking like the MPP have the momentum in that constituency. We don't know what will happen. But this is the raw data that puts up the information. And the analysis here is that the MPP achieved a gain of more than 8.5% in Damongo, which happens to be the hometown of President Mahama's mother. Adom, etc., etc. Okay, yeah, so that's basically that information. You can read it for yourself, viewers. But this is what is showing you in Damongo in particular. All right, let's move on to a central region in focus. All right. In 2018, the central region requested that the NDC push an alternative candidate, but their request, well, we don't know that. I mean, we don't know whether the central region, we can't say why they requested. This is just information that we have found, and it's being put together by people who are members of the NDC, and we are sharing it with you. We don't know that they requested for something to be changed. We are not inner party operatives. But this is the result. In 2016, NDC in central region won 4 parliamentary seats. And President Mahama also won 4 constituencies. So if you look at the 2016 results on your screen, you will see that to my left here, you see 2016 results. NDC won 4 parliamentary seats. NPP won. NDC won 4 parliamentary seats. John Dramani Mahama, the NDC's presidential candidate, also won 4 constituencies. Check it out on the same page on 2020 on the right-hand side of the screen now. You can see it clearly. NDC won 13 parliamentary seats. John Dramani Mahama won 4 constituencies, which is what he won in 2016. He remained at where he was in 2016 and in 2020 for the presidential election. The NDC did significantly better in 2020 than they did in 2016, occasioning many more seats in parliament from 4 to 13. Altogether, it means they picked up 11 seats from the central region alone, away from the New Patriotic Party. That was significant. Now, this is the case that they are making against President John Dramani Mahama, that if you look at his trajectory and his build-up, you will see that he was on the decline between 2016 and 2020 in terms of the fortunes of the presidential elections, whereas the parliamentary fortunes were rising, the presidential fortunes was coming down. So that's what they are building against him. Let's look at the Volta region, the NDC's most powerful home region, where they get the most powerful and the widest margin of votes in any election since 1992. Here is the data in front of you now. 2012, NDC wins in Volta region 579,298 votes, making 91.39% of the total votes cast in the Volta region in 2012. MPP wins 46,000. Check it out. NDC winning 579,000, almost 580,000. MPP wins 46,942, making 7%, just 7%. 7.41% of the total votes. That was in 2012. Build it up to 2016. In the Volta region, NDC gets 493,141 votes, making it 87% winner, 87.67% winner of 2016's polls in the presidential election in the Volta region. MPP comes up with 60,804 votes, making MPP get 10% of the total votes cast in the 2016 presidential elections. Among all the constituencies in the Volta region, MPP picks up 10%. Then in 2020, NDC picks up 606,000. That is a higher number of votes, but in percentage terms, the NDC drops from 87% to 84%, about 3% drop or so. The MPP, however, picks up 100,000 votes, also more votes, again, more percentage. MPP now is getting 14.14% of Volta region votes. So the analysis being made here, therefore, is that if you look at this data, you will see that the NDC needs to consolidate its efforts in the Volta region. It needs to consolidate before it keeps sipping it away, and then one day they will come to an election where MPP is getting 30% or so, because that's not happening. The corresponding percentage is not really happening in the MPP strongholds of some parts of Ashanti and Eastern region. So the argument here being made by people is that for the NDC to consolidate the Volta region experience, then they must have their flag bearer, presumptuously President John Dramani Mahama, pick up a running mate from the Volta region. That's the point being made. And that's why the names of Dr. Zanetta Rawlings and others are coming up for consideration. Alexander Segbefia, the Honorable Adom-Otchere, former Speaker of Parliament. That's why they are coming up for consideration. Dr. Rawlings, Alexander Segbefia, Adom-Otchere, the former Speaker of Parliament, are all being talked about to be those who can have the stabilizing factor to stabilize the Volta region, because it will appear that President Mahama on his own is experiencing a little bit of decline in the Volta region. Not significant, but we're just sharing with you so that you can send us your text messages. Okay, I have President Mahama here now. Thank you very much now. Now, I'll make the case for President Mahama now, and then we can build up the case against President Mahama on the ticket of the there's a set of questions that will show you about people raising the issue against President Mahama. So this is President John Dramani Mahama. The biggest case against him is what I've talked about, decline. He's been there before all of that. What's the case for him? Could there be a candidate in this election for the NDC that can marshal a better name recognition than John Dramani Mahama? I am not sure. Now, name recognition is critical for any election. Name recognition, if you go and put me at some place to stand for election, they say, who is he? Who is Paul Adom-Otchere? Once they say, who is he, you're out. Forget it. You can't win. Because they must first learn your name, hear you. I mean, these days, because of technology, all that can happen in 48 hours. You can hear the name today. Tomorrow, you hear him speak, and you think, that's a great candidate. Before then, we didn't have that. But today, that's possible. It is still a case for President Mahama that he does have name recognition. Even if you have to achieve name recognition in 48 hours to compete with him, within that 48 hours that you are trying to achieve it, he is building up on what he already has. So definitely, name recognition works for President Mahama. Having a recognizable demeanor, not face, but a recognizable demeanor, and that is acceptable to people, it's important. President Mahama has that as well. He has a recognizable demeanor, and he has a demeanor that's acceptable to people generally. People generally accept his demeanor. So that works for him. Well, all that can be whittled away by the question of what will you do when you become president, given what you did when you were president. That can whittle it away, but we don't know whether it will. You see, voters work as individuals, and every individual voter decides in his mind what are the priorities. Is it the name recognition? Is it the demeanor that I like? Is it MPP that I think they should leave power, whether they are good or bad, whether they are Baumia allies, just get out of this place? There are voters who are going to have that position. There are voters who are also going to say, when President Mahama came, what did he do? They're going to think through that. There are voters who are going to say, I don't want NDC ever again. I remember my dooms. I don't want NDC ever again. There are voters who are going to say, MPP have been here for 8 years. They have to go for NDC to come. Let's continue our 8 years, 8 years. That's the way we've been building this country. Let's not change it. So all of that put together, if you put President Mahama in the middle of that, he has a clear advantage in name recognition. He does have an advantage in a recognizable and acceptable demeanor. That's correct. Those are working for him. Policy doesn't work for him that much because he's going to struggle to do a policy comparative analysis. 8 years kind of works for him. But again, as the Economic Intelligence Unit said, 8 years is NDC's term, but it's not with somebody who has already been president. But I don't know how Ghanaians are going to receive it, how they're going to vote. But this is the case for President Mahama. Let's go to the final case. The case against him is what people would think or call a steady decline in the election fortunes of the polls. But let's look at this. This is the questions that people are asking. Why would you push for a candidate that can only serve for 4 years instead of 8? Isn't 8 years better than 4 years for our party? Well, so the argument they're going to make is that if you elect any of the other candidates, Dr. Dufour or Kojo Bonsu, they have 8-year tenure to be president. President Mahama has 4 years only. We know that 4 years actually means 2 years of work and 2 years of finding out who comes after him, which minister comes after him. Is a vice president that comes after him, or is it a minister that comes after? They're going to have a kind of difficult situation. 2 years from now, Ghana has to look for another president. You can't have a president for 4 years and be changing him because you've had one for 8 years. But if you're going to change one for 4 years, then you're going to have a difficult situation. Let's give it to somebody who can win 2024 and continue for another term. So that's one of the early questions against him. The other ones are, why are we advocating for a candidate that can only serve 4 years over a candidate that can serve 8 years, especially when the 2024 elections will be centered around improving the economy and creating jobs? And the 4-year candidate has no track record in improving an economy. Wow. Given that we will be in the IMF for 2 years, during the 4-year candidate's term, how can we guarantee the party another 4 years when he has no experience in creating fiscal space within a short period? Okay. But the candidate is president. He can have a finance minister do that, can't he? All right, let's move on. With the constitutional mandate to push for a new candidate 2 years into his 4-year term, won't that cause division and shift loyalty among party members 2 years in, leaving no focus on fixing the economy and creating jobs, meaning we will lose the election in 2028? Well, I don't know about that. If the presumptive candidate lacks a clear internal message, what external message will he convey? What is our strategy to win the 2024 elections? Have we developed a plan? Is our campaign strategy solely focused on insulting the NPP, or do we have policies to fix the economy and transform the country? What are these clear policies? How will the presumptive candidate secure victory without financial resources, given that he was unable to fund his primary campaign? Investors view him as a high-risk candidate after 2 consecutive election losses. How can we plan for a win without financial support? Considering that we were unable to collate the EC results in the last 2 election cycles under the presumptive candidate, what is our plan to secure victory against the Electoral Commission? Okay, you've seen all these questions being asked. So that's, we did a case for President Mahama. This is a bit of the case against President Mahama. But people must decide how they want to go about it. Well, that's probably the end of our first story. We'll come back on the